It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Now, this is really interesting. Came out of Reuters.
Yeah.
U.S. engineers have discovered mysterious undocumented communication devices lurking in some Chinese-made solar panel power inverters and batteries. The rogue components provide additional undocumented communication channels that could allow firewalls to be circumvented remotely with potential catastrophic consequences, said Reuters sources who spoke anonymously because they had not been given permission to speak on the record. Where are these sources coming from? Who are these sources? You can't tell us who these sources are?
Right.
I mean, not names, but
Where the sources are from. Right, yeah.
Are they from the government?
Right.
Are they from the CIA?
Right.
Are they from, engineers that have inspected them? The story illustrates the security issue that exists. Be interesting to see to see more on this story. In the case of the suspicious Chinese power inverters, the devices were designed to connect solar panel arrays and windmills to power grids. They have internet capability, so their performance can be monitored and their software can be updated easily. Knowing this to be standard practice, the information technology teams at solar and wind farms set up firewalls as a precaution to prevent the devices from sending unauthorized signals. They also physically inspect equipment from China to look for bugs, and they find them with shocking regularity. The two people declined to name the Chinese manufacturers of the inverters and batteries with the extra communication devices, nor say how many they had found in total. The existence of the rogue devices has not previously been reported. The U.S. government has not publicly acknowledged the discovery, Reuters said. These rogue communication devices could do a lot more than just spy on the American power grids that use them. Cybersecurity experts have long warned that hostile powers are very interested in targeting American infrastructure. Hidden internet connections could allow an attacker to shut down power grids or damage sensitive machinery. They said the units that they inspected were sold without proper authorization outside of their distribution contracts for the Western Hemisphere, and the simultaneous bricking occurred not because they sent a kill command over the internet, but rather because the unauthorized units did not receive the scheduled firmware updates. There you go. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's just thought we would throw that your way. When we talk about trade with China.
Yeah.
Maybe the president will say that if you have more than 2 dolls, they have bugs in them.
Well, look, the entire thing about TikTok and the Chinese being able to spy on you through the TikTok app, or if you've ever visited TikTok, or if you've ever used the word tick followed by talk, whatever the standard is. While it's clearly a serious issue, isn't the only issue when it comes to spying on Americans or spying on the American government from China. There are in fact, I think the greatest concern has to be right now with the advent of AI, where they are in the game and what they would use that for. You and I have great concerns about AI used by our own government in the future in a world where we remember a time when there were a lot of conservatives saying the whole NSA thing wasn't a problem. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The gathering of,
Yep.
phone data
Yeah.
wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
What? And, it's necessary to protect us. That's not how it's being used. So it should be done even if they're misusing it, even if they're abusing power. Well, we've got a concern, I think we talked about this a couple of times before, of our own government and how AI in the future might be used to look into what people are doing, what our own citizens are doing by our government. Well, my gosh, China is likely as advanced as we are on AI, in part because I can't imagine a world where China isn't stealing intellectual property when it comes to AI and applying that at every turn. So the fact that the whole TikTok thing, there's another thing, that still hasn't been remedied. They were going to shut TikTok down, and you had to stop it because people needed their TikTok. And it's, it makes me wonder if, just like the national debt, if we have far too many people that just aren't greatly concerned about China or any other nation spying on us through technology. You don't have to wear a tinfoil hat to know what's going on or to be concerned about it. Although I will tell you, it does help.
We are.
Yeah, I wear a helmet while I'm mowing my lawn. It's just what I do. And I'll tell you right now, there's no evidence that the Chinese have ever gotten anything out of me. So there, it must be working. But those elements, when you think about what China's capable of doing, has to be of great concern. Our biggest threat really is ultimately long-term is China. And, I don't know where it goes. If I were going to do a documentary, it probably would end up being classified in one of those, that corner of YouTube where, it's lots of mentions of the Illuminati and all that. The Rothschilds, the Colonel with his wee bitty eyes. But I would really get into, if I were going to do a documentary, talking to people, interviewing people for that documentary about what they know about China's ability when it comes to AI. Because intellectual property rights is one thing commercially. It destroys wealth here domestically, here in the U.S., and is of great concern, which is why you and I believe the pressure, whether through tariffs or otherwise, should be put on China until there's greater confidence that they are not engaging in that policy. I don't know if that, by the way, if that toothpaste is already out of the tube. I suspect that it might be, that there may never be a way to get on top of China and controlling that because, again, you just can't trust anything coming from China in terms of what they're saying they're doing, and there's nothing, I don't know how you enforce it. The intel community has a lot of information, but again, they can only tell us what's going on. They can't control what's going on. That's not how the intel community works, much to the chagrin of people in Hollywood who want you to believe that. And so I don't know, but I think it's one of the most fascinating things right now on our plate as to our future. And if we have a growing public who isn't greatly concerned about these things, By the way, our national debt also has to do with national security. I think we're finding that out with the bonds market. You know, when foreign investors can dictate the terms, of trade, even if you take tariffs off the table, if they have the upper hand because they control a chunk of our debt, that's got to be a great concern. And if you don't have that concern now, you haven't been paying attention over the last few months. So, again, I'm not one of these paranoid people, but there is a time to be greatly concerned. And it's not when things are hitting the fan. It's long before that. And I do believe this particular president is concerned about it.
Yeah, how do you solve that if if you look right now, you've got the the president's talked about the 10% across the board tax, the 20% fentanyl tax, but really has not addressed in the same passion the intellectual property rights stealing.
I haven't heard much about that this round at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that would be one. If you're going to convince the American public that that they need to sacrifice in some manner or form, that would be an easy way. An easier way. I won't say there's no easy way. It would be an easier way to do it, to say our intellectual property is being stolen. They're stealing things from us.
Right.
That's why, we're doing it.
Right.
Fentanyl, the American public can understand, but they can also understand stealing intellectual property.
Right.
They understand the concept of trade, maybe not fully, but they understand the concept of how people benefit from it. But when you see things like this story, well, you mean we're getting equipment over here that has bugs in it? We're having equipment over here where it would make it where a rogue actor who supports China or is involved in China could shut down a grid.
Yeah.
What? They're stealing our intellectual property over there in China. I mean, you can take this. You take it from just a moral or the fentanyl situation, and you make it into the fact that they may be spying on us. We know they're cheating, but they're also might be spying on us at the same time, and we're giving them the ability to do things that we would never do if they were built in other countries or in the United States.
Right.
More Western allies.
Sure.
And I just haven't heard enough talk about that.
Well, there hasn't been, and it makes me wonder if now, again, there's a greater concern on the things that I've talked about lately, including what I just mentioned, that the greater concern is what they're doing, again, with the ability to spy on us, to plant devices or whatever it might be. It's a very intriguing, but in many ways scary time to live in when you think about what all could be done. And knowing that China has that ability in large part to the fact that they have trade at all, that they send things to the U.S. and other parts of the world all the time. Well, what is that? Ultimately, that's access. Well, should they have that kind of access at all? Again, I tend to believe the toothpaste is out of that tube. You can't reverse that, and I don't know how you enforce on intellectual property rights, and is that why we haven't heard much on it? Because if you start down that road, it becomes a promise you can't keep.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by Howe's Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Another global record wheat crop projected in the new marketing year. USDA World Agricultural Outlook Board Chair Mark Jekanowski says,
actually, our current forecast for the new crop year is 808.5 million tons.
With the main catalyst for the forecasted world wheat production increase being
a big rebound in production in the EU, which we have up about 13.9 million metric tons.
A first look at the U.S. balance sheet for the 2025-26 marketing year includes updated winter wheat production forecasts.
We have production down for the new crop year by about 50 million bushels at just over 1.9 billion bushels.
Lower forecasted exports due to record world supplies leads to higher ending stocks and a season-ending average price of $5.30 a bushel, down 20 cents from the prior marketing year. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. The Supreme Court to take up birthright citizenship and our national injunctions abused. Who knows where they're going to rule on it? I would say on the injunction, I would say that they would probably agree with us that the district courts can't do it. I was reading here in the Wall Street Journal. The first question is straightforward. The 14th Amendment was ratified after the Civil War and the Dred Scott decision, which said black former slaves and their descendants were excluded from U.S. citizenship. The amendment begins all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. A dispute is where illegal aliens are subject to U.S. jurisdiction. The longtime interpretation suggests yes. This is from the Wall Street Journal. In the precedent from 1898, the Supreme Court held that a man born in San Francisco to alien parents was a citizen. The majority held that the 14th Amendment affirmed the ancient and fundamental rule of citizenship by birth within the territory, including all children including all children here born of resident aliens. Exceptions included children born to foreign diplomats or to enemies in a hostile occupation. The only thing I would look at that and say, what was the intent back then? The intent back then was because of Dred Scott, which was specifically for blacks that were kidnapped and taken here and forced here to the United States, which is a completely different ballgame if you interpret it the decision that was passed then as being to correct the wrong of Dred Scott.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And it should apply to that because it didn't apply before. It didn't apply to everyone. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out on that. The district court thing, I think, is a slam dunk.
Yeah, I think that's a slam dunk. You might get, I don't know, a 6-3 decision on that one, maybe. We'll see. But the problem is with that district court thing, again, we see the activism over and over again. And this assumption that, first of all, that the courts can shut down, district court judges can shut down the administration, and also that in the cases involving illegal immigrants and deportations, that there is this implied, the left wants you to believe that, well, they all deserve a court process where they can go through, and there needs to be, a jury of their peers even to decide whether or not. That's not how it works.
No.
That's not how immigration law works at all.
And we'll get to that coming up on the bottom of the hour, something that was said in Congress yesterday. But understand that the president also said all children here born of resident aliens. They were legal immigrants to the United States that the president said it. So the administration is going to be arguing that, saying, well, these are illegals in here. They're not legally.
Daytime is overrated. Nights are where it's at. With Gary and Eric on Red Eye Radio.
Days are overrated.
That's true.
Nights are where it's at.
I've been up during daylight hours. Not that great.
We see it both, don't we?
Yeah,
night,
we do.
Day,
We do.
We're up
Well,
all the time.
Thanks, Democrats.
Yeah.
It really is never ending. It actually is a 24-hour-a-day job. So, yeah.
Well, we were both looking when we could at parts of the testimony of Christine Owen before Congress yesterday, and it got into the whole Garcia thing again and due process. And it was interesting because Representative Mark Green had this great statement yesterday about, as you were just talking about, the whole due process thing, that this isn't a thing where you sit there and you get to go to court and a criminal court decides whether you're a gang member, a Venezuelan gang member.
Yeah.
The immigration judges, they're the ones that do it. There is a process that goes on because you had, I think it was, MTG. That was saying, here it is right here. Here's what law enforcement says. But that's not due process. That's just law enforcement saying it. It's all you need to convince a judge.
Yeah.
They're making it sound like you need a court.
Right.
And it was Goldman that was screaming it.
Yeah.
And so here's Representative Mark Green in his response to the Democrats as they talk about due process.
I want to make a clarification here because there's been so many incredibly false and misleading things said today. Once a deportation order has been issued, the due process is over. The due process occurs prior to that, where the judge makes a decision with the information, oftentimes the help of NGOs, sometimes in the past funded by the federal government. But the judge issues an order, and there's well over 1 million people in this situation that are being deported appropriately. No lawyer is offered at that point. The judge has made a decision. The due process has already occurred. It's really important to make that point. People are not inhuman or violating the law. They're following the law. They're executing an order that's been presented by a judge. I saw a meme somewhere this week that said a society that makes war on its law enforcement better learn how to make friends with its criminals. You know, I've said this before, the left has this incredible heart for the criminal. They defend the criminal. A full-throated defense of criminals over the safety of Americans and the following of the rule of law. We've even seen the defense of a congresswoman, who threw a punch at a police officer. I mean, that's unconscionable. You know, if I was a 100% politician, and I'm not, but if I was a 100% politician, I'd be happy with that. Why? Because that's exactly the reason they lost every single swing state in the recent election, the border. This full-throated defense of criminals and the punching of law enforcement in the face. It's why they lost every single swing state, and Republicans gained in almost every state more votes than we'd ever gotten before. Because the American people recognize who the good guy really is. And it ain't Tren de Agua. Or a guy who was driving 8 women, young women, through my state, and the Biden administration said, do not detain him. As I've said before, the left doesn't know a good guy from a bad guy. They street violent criminals and they want to defund ICE. That's been their mantra since I've been in this position. It's ridiculous. It's heinous. And yes, if I were a pure politician, I'd say keep going, guys. But what it does is it breaks my heart. I am a combat veteran, and I have a kindred connection to those law enforcement agencies and agents who put their ass on the line, their lives on the line for our safety. And we're fussing about whether or not the guy has a mask on to to protect his identity when he's an undercover agent. I don't know how many people made an issue out of that. Give me a break. Want to cut a deal with Iran, destabilize the Middle East, punch Saudi Arabia in the face, we get an imbalance in what happens, an invasion of Israel. They don't know a good person from a bad person. That's why the American people said, we don't want them in charge. Again, if I were a pure politician, I'd say, keep going, guys. But it's a spit in the face to the men who wear that uniform. It's a charade. That's what it is. It's a charade. To say something about law enforcement and turn around and be okay with a U.S. Congresswoman punching a police officer in the back. It's infuriating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Representative Mark Green yesterday. I mean, it's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of like this is our audio cut of the day. All right, this is coming up. Not the one we just played, but this is because it fits in perfect after that one. As President Trump yesterday or 2 days ago was asked by Sean Hannity about the state of the Democratic Party. So here it is.
Well, not all of them. I think you have a lot of them that they don't know where they are right now. I think they don't know what to do, like men playing in women's sports. I saw a guy that I know, good guy, Democrat. He's trying to justify, 2 days ago on television, he's being hammered, and he's trying to justify men playing in women's sports, and it's sad. I wanted to call him and say, you better get off that subject. That's not an 80-20, that's about a 97-3, okay? If they talk about, you know, the famous, they always say it's 80-20. What's not, a lot of these things are not 80-20, like transgender for everybody. Let's have transgender for everybody, your kids, everybody. That's not an 80-20. They always say that's 80-20. That's 99-1, I would say. So, look, in one way, I don't like talking about it because I don't want to talk them out of it. Because, you know, it would be harder to beat them if they were normal on things. It shows that they're almost insane. And they do suffer from Trump derangement syndrome at a high level. And I guess I'm honored by that. But I'll say this, look.
I'm honored by that. But he's right, and we agree with him. We don't want them to normalize. There's zero indication that they're going to. They keep going full-on radical, and they believe, again, that they're right. They don't see that on the issues that they're wrong, and they are, you know, like as he puts it, on many of these issues. I think I've said something like that. I think I said 90-10. But in some of those issues, a couple of them, 99-1. It really is, though. It is this level of insanity that they have reached, and the fact that they show no signs of stopping or slowing down. In fact, every sign points to we have to do more. We need to become better organized to do the radical things we're trying to do. And that's always going to be, and I think this is the frustration of people like James Carville, but others who are watching this going, you're never going to win. You can't win again if you don't do this.
If the president on tariffs solves that problem and the economy gets moving, and in a year from now we're in positive growth and there isn't another war and Abraham Accords are being signed with Syria and Saudi Arabia. And even saying that, remember this day, remember May 15th when I said it, because I'm laughing going, that can't happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But if that does happen, as we have stated, what do the Democrats have? What issues do they have? I said it in 2018 that they're going to have to change.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's 7 years ago I said that. And they've changed. They've just gone more radical. I mean, you see, Jasmine Crockett was on Colbert. She's making the round. All the night shows want her on.
Yeah.
And she's a complete lunatic. She's becoming the face, and they think it's a good thing.
Right. No, they do.
She's becoming the face. Yes. I am led by a lunatic. Remember, she is my congresswoman by 3 blocks.
Yeah. Well, led is a big word here. Yeah. You're allegedly represented by.
Thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
I can look out my back window and I can see where Free Texas is.
Right. Yeah.
It's right where the big electrical pole is, about 3 blocks away.
Right.
And you get to that electrical pole and you're out of Jasmine Crockett's district.
Yeah.
And many a time I'll sit back as the sun is setting and I'll look across the distance to Free Texas and Free America. Outside of the 30th District of Texas.
You know who you should hire? David Blaine. Have him magically move your house.
Every time I say that, I get some type of communication. Every time I've said that, saying, wait a minute. She's a Texas congressperson? She's your representative? How? It's Texas.
Yeah.
She's the most insane of all.
Yeah.
Like, we have insane Democrats down here. Maybe not as many as Illinois, New York, or California, but we've got a big population down here.
Yeah, we do.
The second biggest state.
Yep.
Insanity lives here. I'm sure my neighbor down the street a little bit, who last year in August put on Facebook, anybody who's going to vote for Trump, unfriend me right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure she is a loyal supporter.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure she is. Again, we do have our share here in Texas. Every state does. They all have them. But you look at where they're putting all of their clout.
Yeah.
What are they clearly heavily investing in as the future of their party?
Nothing. They're having a hard time. They can't get over, the whole Biden debacle. They just can't say, okay, we lied to you because you wanted to win. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
We all lied.
Yeah. Right.
So this is going to go on for a while because it's the blame game. What Democrats are now looking as to what Democrats are oppressors and what Democrats are victims. Well, that's what they do. Who do we blame?
Because reality is setting in. Because I might give you a little more respect if you said something like, you know what, we lied because we wanted to win. We lied because we wanted to win, because we didn't want Trump to win. But the problem is when you say that, what you're saying is we didn't care that somebody who was mentally incapable of running the free world was doing so.
And we had some that, which meant, because again, when Bakari Sellers told Scott Jennings 2 days ago, you have a right to know who was running the White House.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's where you get into trouble on this issue.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Of course, we've got to take a gander at the Babylon Bee. We haven't read a headline in a while.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So let me see here. Furious Democrats demand to know who was responsible for covering up Biden's decline. It's almost a true one.
No, it really is.
Pete Rose Hall of Fame induction ceremony to be sponsored by DraftKings.
Well, I wouldn't rule that out. It might happen.
And this is my favorite. The DNC to remove David Hogg after realizing he's David Hogg. That's starting to get news now from the media because they're saying, well, what's going on here now?
Right.
I know Mark Halperin and his podcast was talking about it and said, he goes, and they're chuckling because, well, the election wasn't held right because the whole gender thing, the gender quotas weren't followed here or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Oh, my gosh, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Especially after we made so much fun of all they went through with the whole DEI thing.
Right.
And then who ended up winning?
2 white guys. Yeah. Wow.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.